Hey, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
You remember a couple of weeks ago you were sick?
Yeah, it was bad.
Thanks a lot, man.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
And welcome to another episode of Two Guys Talking About Records of Vinyl Community Podcast. And I am what's left of the voice of Jim, a record store owner.
And I am a record collector. And this is Steve. And I'm feeling so much better now because I finally was able to kind of shake off this cold. Now, it's about sharing.
It is. And, well, you shared with me, and I think I shared with my wife. But, you know, odd thing is, over the past week, we're leading up to the Christmas and the holiday season here at the record store. So we're seeing a lot of people, a lot of new people. I'm going to go on a limb and say this past week alone, 7 out of every 10 people that came in here were either coughing or sniffling or sneezing. Some way, shape, or form, something's going around.
And we all get, is it COVID? Is it not COVID? Everyone's testing to find out, do I have it? I know I did with mine just to find out, can I go into work? Can I not go into work?
Just a nasty cold.
Yeah.
Something's going around.
It is. You hear it everywhere. Yep. We were out to eat this morning. I thought someone had a dog inside this place. I heard this barking, and I go, what's that behind me? And it says, does someone have a dog? No, it's some guy coughing. I mean, he was coughing up a lung.
So I'm going to apologize in advance for the way my voice is acting, and then if I do actually end up coughing up a lung, I'll turn the mic off for a second.
Okay, fantastic.
I cannot think of a worse way to wrap up the year than, just pre-Christmas coming into it with the head cold going in like this. But man, I'll tell you what, we had a year.
Yes, we did. Yes, very much so.
So on today's episode, we are going to wrap up that year, probably a little better than Gravelly Me here. But Steve and I, over the past week or two, came up with a list of categories. You know, a lot of different podcasts and the VC channels, they do their the best of 2023. And so, well, we'd go that direction too, because that seems to be the thing to do.
Yeah.
And, when you're podcasting and do stuff like that, let's wrap things up in that nature. So we came up with a list of categories, so to speak, and we will share them with you and our thoughts on some of the best and maybe a couple of the not so best things in this past year for vinyl collecting.
Exactly.
But speaking of vinyl collecting,
yes,
we're still going to do our weekly ritual with the pickups this week. I had a light one, but did you get some goodies?
Yeah, it never seems to be too light for me. The first one, it's a newer group, Hotline TNT. How's that for exciting?
That sounds like a disco album.
Yes, it's off Third Man Records.
Yep.
It's an alt-rock with a teenage fan club type influence within their music.
Really?
So you get a little bit of that Django, and there's a dab of shoegaze tossed in just to make it exciting.
Hitting some of your buttons there.
It did. I saw that on a YouTube channel. I go, this sounds pretty good.
Jangle Pop Shoegaze. That's a new one for you.
Yeah. So that was neat. I got in my vault package from Third Man Records, the White Stripes Live in Las Vegas, 2003.
Ooh, okay.
Comes with lots of little goodies, 3-album set, lots of colors. It's just well done, because it's coming from Third Man Records.
Yep.
It's very cool. Also from Vinyl Me, please, Herbie Hancock's Sextant came in. Sex something. Oh, okay. See,
it's the nautical device for measuring stars.
Yes, it is. Oh, it had nothing to do with sex.
No.
Okay, all right. Well, then, that came in. I used to have that, and I was like, man, I didn't like that 70s Herbie stuff because I was used to the other things.
Yep.
Now, I've gotten older, and I'm starting to find out, okay, some of this isn't too bad. So instead of asking for credit, I let this one come in, and I'm going to revisit it again.
There you go. You didn't go to the 80s Herbie Hancock with the Rocket.
Well, I do like Rocket. Actually, I did rebuy that one. Okay. I like that one, yes. And the final one, and Jim's sitting down, but this will make him feel better, there was Rush's Moving Pictures.
Color me absolutely astounded.
It was on clearance, the 40th anniversary, and I go, well, look at that price. I might as well just buy it. And it's the one, to me, I guess, when I think of Rush and their most commercial.
Yep, it is.
That's the one.
That is the one. So we've talked about this as well, and I think we're going to come the first of the year, delve into this a little more deeply.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
Okay.
General impressions first off?
Well, I knew this album, so that helped. The second side, I like the first side better than the second side. Why? Because of the commercial appeal of Tom Sawyer and that other song.
Limelight.
Yeah, that's it. So, those both I find very
You
enjoyable.
get into the other side, you get a little longer, like The Camera Eye and Witch Hunt, which are completely keyboard-centric. And
Witch Hunt was the one I go, huh. So, I have to figure out some of that.
we'll talk next year a little bit more in depth.
Okay.
We'll put you on a diet.
Yes, okay. So what about your light week?
Light week. Things have been really busy here at the store. And I was actually, going into last night, we record this on a Sunday, so as I'm getting ready to close the store down, it got a little quieter. And I threw one on. I didn't add to my collection until last night. How's that?
Okay.
And it was an album that we put out in our Friday drop, and it survived Friday, a busy, busy Friday, and a busy Saturday. And I thought, well, let me just give this a little. It's been a long time, but I kept a first pressing of The Specials, self-titled, from 1980. The Specials.
Yeah.
I don't have a ska album, so to speak, in my collection, unless you count some parts of Big Audio Dynamite, which not really, but this is straight up ska from The Specials. And again, I'd been familiar with them from my college radio days, and I listened to this. I thought, I remember that. I remember that. I dig it. Monkey Man is a great song, along with the Message to You, Rudy. So I think that after I played it, it just did not make it back out to the shelf. How's that?
I miss that. Wow, I missed that in your bins.
Yeah, that was there Friday.
Okay.
So, it's going into personal.
Good.
At least for a while.
All right, very nice.
I'm tired of it. I don't know how often I'm going to go back to a ska album, but I had fun with it. Mm-hmm. So, onward we go, dear listeners, to our subject du jour of the day, and that is the wrap-up of 2023, the year in vinyl for two guys talking about records.
You said du jour.
I did. Did I? Did I use it correctly?
I have zero clue. I've never really dropped that in a sentence, but it sounded great.
The cold medicine brings out some of the deeper vocabulary in me from time to time.
I think I need to get on some cold medicine.
It's the cough medicine. I can think back to Bill Murray driving in the bridge. Maybe it's all the cough medicine. So the categories we have come up with to kind of wrap up our year are not necessarily things that are in our collection, but things that we have talked about, things that we have touched upon, but also things that we have brought into our collection. Mm-hmm. Obviously, when we're talking about the best of, we're going to have some affinity for these things that we have added to the collection. So where would you like to start? Just right off the top as we go?
Let's go big. Let's just go start with our best new album.
The best new album of 2023. Maybe added to the collection, or did?
I did.
Okay,
yes.
What you got?
Okay, well, I've actually been working on my best album of 2023 at home. So I've been really listening. I purchased over 30 new albums this year as I'm trying to find new groups and find new things. And I really came down to like three that I mean, boy, this was tough. One was a group called Elton Gun. They're out of, I think, the Netherlands. But they are a Turkish psych rock band.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yes, and the album was Ask. And they really went back to the Turkish psych rock roots. They had been getting away with that, almost a little more dancey. And they went full throttle back into Turkish psych. And it was, I put that on again and go, man, this is so good. Another one was a recent release, The Rain Parades, Last Days of a Dying Sun, that I have had just a hard time taken off the turntable. It's so catchy. The guitar work in that, they even some backwards guitars going on. There's a lot of jangle pop within it, but yet so much more. It was such a surprise, because the group's been around since '80. To come out with something so fresh and so new, I was really shocked. But my favorite comes down to Moby. And Moby did a reimagining again. The album was Resound New York. And again, he went back to the well, but he's on Deutsche Grammophon now. So they bring in some orchestration to his music, but he has all these different singers that come in and are part of it. Now, we know that this can either be a disaster or something good. And this is a 2-album set. Quite honestly, the fourth side, I thought he could have dropped. There was some of the reimagining I didn't care for. But overall, he just added a new dimension to that music. You know, it was so electronic, and now we've made it into something much larger, especially with the orchestration. But these guest singers he bring in just really bring something to it. And one of my favorite tracks is he does Neil Young's Helpless. He has Margot Timmons from the Cowboy Junkies come in and sing, and it's really a stripped down. It is, I mean, it's just almost like wrenches your heart from your chest. There's so much beauty to this song between him and this Margot Timmons singing. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Wow. It's interesting, too, that you say that, especially with these reimagined, which is a topic that will come up here in a little while on this episode, where things could go really, really wrong if they're not treated right. But this one, I'm glad it worked for you.
Yeah, and so he had done this once before, and that was my best album of that year. It's not like I have all of Moby's discography. I do like him as an artist, but Deutsche Grammophon really came through and made 2 just gorgeous albums.
Well, cool.
So what about you, Jim? What was your favorite new album of the year?
Well, this was kind of a tricky one for me. I went back and I looked, and it's like, well, I didn't add a lot of new albums to the collection this year, personally. You know, I see a lot come through the store, and there are certain ones that will open up for play copies. If I like them, they stay. If I don't, once we deplete our stock, then I put that out as a reduced, store play copy. I'm thinking of a few things. One that I'm still kind of on the fence about, though, is the Margot Price Strays, which I thought was a really good album.
Yeah.
And I've had an open play copy in the store here for a while, and I've been enjoying it. Not sure if that's going to stay in the collection or not, but it is a really nice album. Other ones that I think were close to being in contention, and I'm still on the fence with the Rolling Stones' Hackney Diamonds. I still have an open copy playing on that. And I got to admit, as much as we kind of harped on it during our Rolling Stones episode, it's growing on me a little bit. But I'm not quite there yet. The one, though, that did stick for me was Marcus King's Carolina Confessions. And I know that's really kind of out of my wheelhouse when you're thinking of kind of an alt-country artist in this instance.
Yeah.
But it's really got some very bluesy undertones to the album, I think, which is appealing to me. And maybe, I don't want to call it the bluegrass because, I've been kind of having that little bluegrass infatuation lately.
Yeah.
But it's just an interesting, different type of album. And I had not been familiar with Marcus King at all. But we did have an open store copy, and I've grown fairly attached to it. It's a beautiful piece of orange marbled vinyl to boot. So it's like, well, we're just going to keep this one. So I'm going to say that, as oddly as that sounds for me, that Marcus King Carolina Confessions is going to be my best new one of 23. And that came out, back in August, actually.
Well, yeehaw!
There
How
we go.
about that? I was wondering why suddenly you're wearing cowboy boots and stuff. Now I know.
It's the Spurs.
Yes.
So this leads me to something a little more in my wheelhouse, a lot of reissues.
Yeah.
This was a good year, I think, for reissues. Not in every single case, but there was some really good stuff coming out this year. What would you have for your best reissue album of 2023?
So my best reissue really came down. There was 2 albums I bought that had only been in CD, and they were not being reissued. This year they finally did. One was the Ryle Kiley Blacklight that they reissued for Record Store Day. I have been waiting and waiting so patiently for this. And most of Ryle Kiley's catalog has already been reissued, but not Blacklight. And so finally for Record Store Day it was, and that was exciting. The other one is from the artist Granddaddy.
Yep.
And they did a reissue campaign on his stuff. And Someday, which I find to be just a gorgeous album, was finally put onto vinyl. And so to pick up both of these are both CDs that I played the heck out of and totally loved. So I was super excited to get both of them.
Well, cool. The reissues for me, there was a lot that came through, and I've got a couple of standouts. Rush reissued it was the anniversary reissue of Signals. Not my favorite Rush album. We're going to talk about that because it's a very keyboard-centric 80s synth pop album more than anything, but there's still some good stuff on there. They put out a picture disc version of it with new artwork by Hugh Syme, which was actually pretty cool. So I've got that. That's a decent reissue. I mean, there were a few other big ones, obviously, with Pink Floyd having their anniversary of Dark Side of the Moon. It was a big year for reissues. I mean, especially the anniversary ones with 1973 being 50 years out. There's going to be some big ones also. A late add to this, and it's not so much a reissue as it was a repressing of something from 2014, was Rush's, another Rush one, their first self-titled album, Rush. Out of the clear blue, a repressing showed up of this box set called Rush Rediscovered, which was a 2014, their first box set of that first album, which was a reproduction of the original Canadian Moon label version of that album. And that just popped up out of nowhere. I don't know if that counts as a reissue yet because I haven't had one open or looked at the runouts to see if it's a different pressing. But I have to assume it is because that thing's been out of print for about 3 years now. Yeah. But top of the list for me, best reissue of 2023 is Cake's Comfort Eagle.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I have been waiting and waiting and waiting. I mean, they've gone through some of these Cake albums with their reissues. And, you know, a few years back, it was like, when in the world are they going to start reissuing Cake on vinyl? Mm-hmm. Not reissuing, but actually putting Cake on vinyl. Yeah. Because a lot of these had never been on vinyl before, with the exception of this outrageous box set that I think was a Record Store Day thing several years back.
And wasn't there some bootlegs that were?
There was lots of bootlegs, yeah. So you could get the bootlegs, but, you know, yeah, those are cool and everything. And I had a couple of those, but official reissues of Cake started showing up, I think, last year, 22. Mm-hmm. And then so when they started showing up, of course you get it. Well, these are cool, but when's Comfort Eagle coming out?
Yeah.
So that one they did. That was Cake's fourth studio album. That one was originally released in 2001. And this is the one with short skirt, long jacket, and more importantly, the title track, Comfort Eagle, which I think is just a fantastic,
it is
just a driving song that it's got this angst and anger to it, but it's a cool tune.
Is that the one where you can call me dude?
Yes.
Yes, that just cracks me up.
He's calling you dude. So happy about that. That came out in September of this year. So that tops my list for best reissue.
You know, when you think about it, every year is going to be huge with 50th anniversary.
Oh yeah,
reissues and box sets. And you know, as long as the vinyl resurgence keeps going, this is going to get bigger and bigger as they try to get everyone to buy into. You need that album one more time. Just think about Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here.
Oh, I know.
I mean, that's coming up.
Well, the next year marks the 50th anniversary of Rush's self-titled, which made me think that it was odd that they would repress that one that I just mentioned. Yeah. Given that next year is the 50th. And here's my prediction. We didn't fit a prediction for 24 into this, did we?
No.
No, but I'm going to put one in that there will be, I don't know, I could be way off base, but I'm guessing that there's going to be a pretty big box set for Rush's 50th anniversary of that release. And it may or may not coincide with, I would almost have to imagine that Geddy and Alex would tour with another drummer. If only, I mean, sacrilege, this is me talking as a Rush fan, it would be sacrilege to do that without Neil Peart. But that first Rush album from 1974, Neil Peart was not the drummer.
Oh, so you're allowed.
See, well, theoretically. John Rutsey is dead also, but you know, stranger things can happen. But I would venture a guess that there's going to be some sort of big 50th box set celebration of that first album in some way, shape, or form. But you're right, 1974 is going to be a big year for those reissues, the anniversary.
Yeah.
A lot of cool stuff.
Yes.
Next up on our list, this is a fun one. Best live album of 2000. Not necessarily new live, but best live album released in 23.
I don't buy a lot of live albums. I never really have, but there were a few. Dark Side of the Moon live at Wembley.
Okay, good. That's on my list too.
Yeah, I knew it would be. There's no doubt about it. It was spectacular. The sound of it was incredible. It just blows your mind. The other one I just recently got in was Luna, and they did a live of their album Bewitched and a live of their album Penthouse, and they did the full albums on both. And the Penthouse, to me, is the pinnacle of Luna. Every song is killer on that. Do they sound older? Yes, because it's 20 years, later. But it's still, the guitar playing is so good. He is such a fan of Tom Verlaine. And with Tom Verlaine's passing this year, which that one bummed me out. Most of the time I can get through artists dying. I mean, it's happening. But Tom Verlaine was such a cool guitarist. Luna looks at his playing along with the Velvet Underground. Those are their influences. And so it was just fun to hear that. And again, to hear Dean Wareham's guitar. Fantastic.
I'm with you on the not bringing in a lot of live albums. I mean, you have to, I think, be bordering on the superfan status to try to get some of these in, to want everything that they do. But I had a couple on my list. You mentioned the Pink Floyd. I'll come back to that in a second. The one that kind of came in there for me as well was that recent pickup of the Who triple album live at Wembley also, with the Who with orchestra, which is a newer recording of theirs. Now, I've listened to that a couple times, and it's them bringing in some orchestration, especially into some tunes that have orchestration, had them to begin with. And yeah, Rogers does sound a little older. He hits pretty good on those notes. But it's a good live album. It's a thick triple LP, so there's a lot of stuff on there. But like you, far and above, I think the best live album of 23 was that Anniversary. It wasn't even really a reissue because it had never been officially issued before, was that Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon live at Wembley from 1973. I think they did that as well. So that was... the sound, as you mentioned, was absolutely incredible, but I'll go a little bit deeper and talk about the packaging that they did on this. Right down, I mean, the cover was the Dark Side of the Moon cover, but it was the concept artwork from that original design of the Prism cover, but all in black and white. So it complements, I think, your other Dark Side that you would have, the good studio version of that. But it also came with a couple of posters in there, too. I mean, just they're harkening back to that original Dark Side of the Moon release that had those extra goodies in there. And they thickened that up with just a fantastic performance. And it was not a new-ish performance. It was that performance from 1973 that they restored. And this one we had talked about before had been the subject of several different bootlegs over the years. But none of them could come close to comparing to the sound of this one.
Yeah, probably the best-sounding live album I've ever heard.
And hands down, I think the best one of 23.
Yep.
Very cool indeed. All right, I'm going to throw this one completely over to you because I came up a great big goose egg. Seriously, and it's odd. Best new artist. I'll just suffice by saying, I don't think that I've brought in a new artist since Wet Leg of last year, and I'm hard pressed to think of anybody. But you, on the other hand, I defer to the expert.
When I was going through all these new albums, I mean, I have a lot of new groups. But I found as I was checking, they put out one album already or two albums already. And it's like, oh, no kidding. It's not brand new. It's not brand new. I finally found one, and it was a very good. It came out at the very beginning of last year's. Actually, there's two groups. One's called The Tubs. They're out of the UK, and it's just a great rock band. A little bit of jangle within their music, but good vocals, harmonizing, fun stuff. The Tubs. And I turned a number of people onto that album. They wound up going by it, and really, in fact, some have been writing to me. This is one of my favorite of last year. So that was cool. The other one is a group called The 1981, and they're out of New York. Great rock band. Like a little bit. There's a little punk in there, a little garage rock type feel, but wonderful music. That one, both of these are floating within my top 10. I'm still trying to figure out my top 10 for the year. It has been extremely difficult to do right now. It is, yes, for my channel. I mean, I'm just struggling with this. I know what my top ones are, but after that. But both of these were brand new artists, the first albums, and they were excellent albums.
All right, so I'll have my homework set out for me to try to do better next year in 24.
Yeah.
I promise. So the UK Tubs, huh?
Yeah, the UK Tubs. There is, there's so many, I guess when you think of new artists, a lot of them are more in the pop vein that we hear, and we're not shall we say, neither of us are in tune to that, what's on.
Correct.
Yeah.
We could probably talk about the likes, but even like Olivia Rodrigo is not new. She's had an album or two come out as well, but she's making a big push. But, I can't remember being super excited about a new artist since 22's Wet Leg. That was a really good one for me that year.
Yeah, same here. Absolutely.
So now let's move on. Something I've got a little more insight on. The best compilation album of 23. These are where you put together multiple artists, whether it be a soundtrack or otherwise KTEL. You picked up a lot of KTEL, right?
Yeah. Actually, there was a box set. Did I buy that here?
Just wait for that KTEL box.
Of the 70s.
They'll do it eventually.
Yes, there will be. Yeah, there was 2 compilations. I bought a few more. There was that record store day one of Nuggets, which I did purchase. But 2 of them that I really liked, but this one actually came out a couple years ago, but I bought it this year, was Strum and Thrum. And it was a Jangle Pop from 83 to 87. Absolutely wonderful album. It introduced me to more new groups that I might have, that I didn't know about, something to look at and dig into. But my favorite, by far, was called Waves of Distortion, the best of shoegaze. Yep. And this goes from the mid-'80s all the way up to 2023 with Ringo Death Star, which is a fantastic group that I have a few of their albums. So it's nice that they take this genre and they take it through. It's 2 album set, but they bring it all the way up to what it's sounding like now, because shoegaze is still there and it's producing some great music that's morphing and changing, and it's I'm really excited about this. It's been my favorite. I bought it in CD and in album form.
And I remember when that came in, the album part was delayed for several weeks, and you're like, where is it?
Yes. And, I bought the CD for my vehicle. Of course, then the company gave me a new lease vehicle that doesn't have a CD player. I was like, oh, man, this is bad. But, yeah, that was great. What about you? Best compilation.
One that stands out for me, and this is really not more than KTEL removed by one step in this case. It was one that came out, I think, in midsummer or early summer, May. I'm looking at this, and it was a various artist compilation called Alternative Anthems.
All right.
And, at first I thought this was all 80s stuff, but it is not. It's a double LP set of just good 80s, 90s alternative music, college radio, not quite jangle pop. Mm-hmm. You get the likes of Sonic Youth on here, Husker Du, Mudhoney, Sleater Kinney, which I'm not overly familiar with, but Dinosaur Jr., Sugar from Bob Mould. Yeah. There's an REM tune on there, and Soundgarden. So you see how it's bouncing around between. It's playing fast and loose with those decades, that late 80s, early 90s, and through there. The Flaming Lips, and this is one of the reasons I got it. The song She Don't Use Jelly, great tune, but I don't want to buy an entire Flaming Lips album, which for me is always hit and miss for that one cool song. But, but you got replacements and Screaming Trees. Belly is on here with Feed the Tree, which is a great alternative tune as well. Camper Van Beethoven, Take the Skinheads Bowling, and Temple of the Dog, and Buffalo Tom. So I saw that going through. I got a couple for the store. I'm like, you know what? We're just going to keep one of these, because on those times that I feel like listening to some good, I'm going to still say 80s alternative, although there's some 90s in there. I'll just throw that on, and it's like a mixtape on vinyl, which is I'm cool with.
Yeah, it's a greatest hits of the decade.
Yeah, if the decade goes from 85 to 95.
Yeah, well,
that's still a decade.
Yeah, it depends on what country you're from or something. Go.
Yes. So that gets it for me in the best compilation.
That's wonderful. That is awesome. I did not pick that one up.
Oh.
I know, and as you're explaining, I go, wow, boy, that is a lot of good stuff. Wow. All right, best box set.
Beck's, for me, I mentioned Rush Signals, and I've got the box set from Signals as well. Not my favorite album, and I'm not trying to be a Rush completist on this, but I do have one of those. And I do have one. They put that out back in April as part of that anniversary ongoing releases every year or so for these. What I don't like about the box set, and I'm saying here's my favorite box set, but I think it's probably one of the other box sets I got this year. Really with the only box set I think I got this year on this one. It's got the album, but then it's got CD versions of the album, but then they've got a Blu-ray audio on there as well. So a lot of unnecessary stuff for me. but it's still Rush, so I'm going to have that one in there for it. But you, I think, probably did a little better on box sets than I did.
I didn't buy a lot, but I think first in the comments we need to put down, is Jim a completist on Rush or not? What are your views and thoughts on this?
I am, but I'm not. Okay, I am. We talked about that last week, yes.
I with limited space, I didn't buy a lot of box sets.
Yeah, that's always the issue.
It is. I just brought in the Fela Kuti. It's box set number 6.
Yep.
It's good. It's very good. But my favorite was that Third Man Records Syd Barrett, titled Syd Barrett, with his solo albums, which is music that I listened to, but kind of I was indifferent to. Yep. And now, as I've gotten older, I listen to it, and I really hear a whole lot. I hear it differently. And as I look at Floyd, I really enjoy those Syd Barrett Floyd albums a lot more.
To see them all in one place, too, is neat. You can pick up reissues of Opal, and I think that there was a Record Store Day issue of an introduction to Syd Barrett, which was a similar thing. But this is a different compilation of those early albums of his together.
It is. Yeah, they actually have the full albums of each of them. There is another album out there of a lot of outtakes and that would have been kind of cool to have included with this, different various outtakes. Though the price jumps, and again, I guess outtakes I'm kind of so-so on. It's like, okay, well, there's a reason it's not on the album. But that one really, was by far my favorite.
We cannot let this subject go without revisiting one of what we feel is the most unnecessary. There were a lot of unnecessary box sets, I think, this year.
There is.
It always is. It's like, why are you doing this?
And especially, as you said that one, we take it, all right, we're giving you the album, we're giving you the outtakes. Hey, now we're going to toss some CDs in there. Let's put in a DVD, maybe a couple DVDs, and the price just keeps skyrocketing.
Yep.
Because we're going to throw in all this other stuff. We're going to give you a stick or two. That'll be an extra $10 for that sucker. And it does get a little overwhelming. If you're a super fan, you open it, your eyes bug out. You go, oh, this is awesome. But if you're not a super fan, you go, what's the purpose?
Yep. And that is the purpose of, I think we're both in agreement that the most unnecessary box set of 2023 was a-ha's The Hunting High and Low 6 LP vinyl box set that was released, back in February.
Yeah, I talked to a gentleman I know out of Norway. He's a big a-ha fan, and he was really excited. And I go, I am happy for you. I'm super happy, but I don't get it. 6 albums on this one. Now, a-ha stayed big out in Scandinavia. They were huge there. But for us in the U.S., here's your one.
It's a one-hit wonder song.
Yeah, it is.
And this one, I'm revisiting this here as well. LP 1 was the album. LP 2 and 3 were demos leading up to the album. So 2 albums worth of demos. You're getting the same songs. LP 4 and 5, singles and extended versions and B-sides of the album. LP 6 is something called the early mixes of the album. So you're getting the same songs. And that's it. 60 tracks for an album that had essentially one hit.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, let's not pick on a-ha too much anymore, shall we? Okay, onward we go with our best of 2023 on Two Guys Talking About Records. Let's talk soundtracks.
Okay. Now, I know where you're going with yours.
Oh, do you?
Okay. Yes, I feel super confident on this one. Yeah, I don't buy a lot of soundtracks anymore. Again, it deals with space, what you have. But it was Barbie, by far the Barbie soundtrack. Oh, God, yes. Oh, okay, maybe not. I haven't bought that yet. But the movie is, now I can watch it on HBO for free, so we'll find out. Maybe I'll be back in. Jim, I need it.
There's one back there.
Yes, perfect. But there were a couple. Nick Cave put out one for the movie Blonde about Marilyn Monroe.
Okay.
I believe that was on Netflix, which is pretty good. It's kind of electronic. But my favorite is this was a documentary that was on Apple, Underground, the Velvet Underground documentary.
Yep.
And so they explore the music first off that kind of influenced them, and then they have a number of their songs on there, a 2-album set. I really enjoy that. But if there's a completist in me, it would probably be the Velvet Underground.
Yep. And that was a documentary, a music-themed documentary as well, so it just stands to reason that they're going to have something good. It's kind of like when they did that Gimme Danger soundtrack from Iggy and the Stooges a few years back. Mm-hmm. Some good stuff on there. Okay, what's my soundtrack then?
It's going to be that one you got in from Mondo, the trilogy. Yes,
The World's End. Very happy to have completed that trilogy from the Edgar Wright. The Mondo World's End went with Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. So you know me too well.
Yep.
Next one we had talked about as far as a category, the best RSD grab of 2023. And safe to say that there probably wasn't a Black Friday one in there or two? Or
actually, the Black Friday is my pick.
Really?
Well, because I can't read. The other one was back in April. You expect me to remember what I picked up back in April? It's like there's a lot of research that has to go into that. But no, I still think this would be it. And it's that El Niño y El Sol.
Yep. Okay, you were really up on that.
So catchy. It is just this. And again, it's that. The gentleman from the Black Pumas, whose name escapes me, Quesada, something like that. It's relaxing. It's fun. There's this wonderful flute that I usually poo-poo the flute, but this sounds beautiful. And the vinyl itself was gorgeous, drop dead. It's called Fancy Pants vinyl is what you call it. Yes, it's very fancy pants. And it is just super cool. I love this album to death, and I put it on and it just brings a smile.
Very cool. So I am going to go back to the April Record Store Day for mine. There was a few that I was really excited about in April, and I did pick up, but by far and above the standout for me was the reissue from Record Store Day of the Verve Pipe's Villains. Michigan group out of the Lansing area from the 90s, the early 90s, and this one had never been on vinyl before, so very happy to have that brought in. Of course, The Freshman's on there, but I always thought that that's the weakest song in the album. Maybe it's just the anti-top 40 guy in me, but the rest of the album is great. There's some personal connection with the band and with this album going back to the younger days of my life. So this one was a good one for me, but picking up Verve Pipe Villains, that's my RSD pick from 23, what I'm happiest about.
You bet.
So as we wrap up our best of 2023s, we're going to take a little step back and talk about a little bit of a disappointment in 23. Steve, is there something that you could look back to vinyl-wise in 23 that you would call the biggest disappointment of the year?
Besides the fact that the Pauly Shore album did not come out, I was very disappointed. I was excited about that.
Maybe it's just delayed.
It might be. It could be. I think the biggest one to me was U2's Song of Surrender. It was, again, a reimagining, but to me, it was a reimagining gone wrong. It was boring. Now, there are some people, I listened to their videos and they loved it. They thought this is great, and they're probably big U2 fans. I am a big U2 fan, but I just thought it was a complete snooze fest.
Something you put on when you want to take a nap or
not
concentrate. Yeah, that one came out back in March.
Yeah.
March.
And you know what? I've never heard anybody talk about it since then. It wasn't. It'll be interesting to see if it hits any list, on the YouTube vinyl community of best album. I say not, but I could be wrong. And then as far as reimagining, some people like this, but that Dolly Parton one, reimagining these songs with her rock star album.
Yep.
I don't know. I just kind of shake my head on that one and go, I don't get it.
National treasure, but was it something? I mean, only listened to a few of them, so I can't judge too much. But I'm on the same boat with you. It's like, okay.
Yeah, there's just some of them were kind of made you cringe a little bit. But if you're a big Dolly fan, I get it. You're probably saying, hey, I love this thing. I like that she's trying something different and she's up there. And I say, God bless you for that. just don't send me one.
Now, as far as disappointments go, I'm taking a two-prong approach. As the record store owner side of me, there were certain things that we had expectations of that didn't quite come to fruition. But I'll also do kind of the personal side of this as well. But from the store side, that big Metallica, the 72 Seasons, there was a lot of hype for that. And yes, it sold well, but I heard mixed reviews from some Metallica fans. Some really, really loved it. Others were just like, it's okay. And it did okay in the store. One of the other ones, though, that was kind of a disappointment was the Foo Fighters, But Here We Are, their first album after the death of Taylor Hawkins. A lot of hype, and I know a lot of people love the album, but it's just not something that seemed to sell very well. And I'm not sure why. I can't quite point my finger to that one. But at the top of my list, or would it be the bottom of my list for the disappointment? This is both just personally speaking as well as from the store. And this is an odd one for me because I've always been a big proponent of these guys from their start. And I'm speaking of Greta Van Fleet's 2023 album, Starcatcher. This was just really kind of a boring album. I don't think that there was anything new and inventive about it. But that could be the formula. They're sticking with what they know. But this one kind of, they started getting a little more prog sounding with their previous album, The Battle at Garden's Gate. And they took it to that Yes and even to the Rush dimension. This moves them back a little bit toward the Zeppelin-esque phase that they started with. But it doesn't quite capture the energy of that very first EP that they put out.
No.
And from the store side, it was just a dud. I mean, I'm sitting on 15 copies of it still.
Wow.
People just aren't getting into it. Now, that was plagued also. They tried to get really gimmicky. There was a clear vinyl version, which is our store copy that I opened, and it sounds fine. And don't get me wrong, it's a decent album. Just kind of a disappointment when you look at it overall. But they really tried to get a little funky, and they made a glitter, an album filled with glitter. I've had at least 2 of those returned because people say that it's noisy. I wouldn't guess that glitter would make noise in an album, but if you stop and think about it, and I'd read some online comments too saying that there's just an inherent noise in the glitter version copies of this.
Okay.
So from the packaging standpoint to the marketing standpoint to just the overall, Starcatcher from Greta Van Fleet was just a big miss for me in 23.
Yeah.
Again, hard for me to say because I've always been a big proponent of these guys.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So on our Two Guys podcast, Steve and I will often talk about some current events and news, and we've picked on Discogs a lot this year as well. But we thought we'd add one other topic in, and that is both the best news and the worst news for vinyl collectors in 2023. And we'll start with you. What do you think was some of the best news for vinyl collectors? Not necessarily a release, but just overall in this past year.
I think for me, it's just the continued growth with vinyl sales. It's still going up. It still remains strong. And I think that's exciting to see when you hear these news reports coming in on sales figures. Now, obviously, we don't have the final numbers for 2023, but it sure seems like it's all still moving in a positive direction, which means more people are getting into it, or we're just making up the sales by charging a whole lot more. It deals with sales, so you can sell less and charge more. But the fact is, there is growth, which means they will continue to come out with product for us, and they will continue to try to expand in. As we talked about 50th anniversary reissues, sales are going up. Boy, they're going to be looking at that and saying, well, what can we do? Now, on the flip side is, how much can we charge for that also? I see some of these getting pretty expensive next year.
I think the best news this past year for vinyl collectors was the entity that is Taylor Swift.
Oh, yeah.
You think back to the April Record Store Day, she was such a draw that brought so many new people into record stores.
Yeah.
But the jury is still out, for me at least, on whether or not that translated into regular customers.
Yes.
For us, it did. 2 or 3 people that came to that initial Taylor Swift event have come back as return customers, but for the most part. But I just think that she, like anything else that she's touching lately, has drawn a lot more attention to vinyl, and a lot more people are seeking her stuff out in vinyl, and then therefore seeking what else is out on there in vinyl. But here's the worst news for vinyl collectors in 2023 is also Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
That's a two-edged sword for me on this. Great that she's drawing attention to it, but, and this is what you just mentioned with the cost, she has set the precedent that there's going to be multiple variations of covers and vinyl colors. She has set the precedent that a single LP can and will sell for $40, double or triple LPs in the $50 to $60 range. And I think that that is going to be looked at by the industry and say, well, if Taylor Swift can command this, we can ask $40 for a single LP for so-and-so and so-and-so. So while I think she's been great for the vinyl industry, I also think that she's setting some dangerous and quite frankly unrealistic precedents for the continuation of the success of vinyl.
Sure. What she needs to do is put out an album of her influences, what has influenced. Can you imagine her fans then going out to buy these influences?
That would be phenomenal. Actually.
Yes, it would be. It would be very good because they're okay, we've got to get all this because that fan base is so rabid. Very interesting. And you're right, one of my worst news is this growth where suddenly a $50 album is normal.
Yeah.
And for no reason for it to be $50. Or we take a single album and we just make it into a 2-album set. Let's drop that at 45 RPM.
Yep. Oh, man, that's nuts.
And then we can get more money. I find that it bothers me to death. It's outpricing. And there's albums I'm not buying because of it.
Yeah. On the hint that it's an audio file with better quality because it's 45 RPM.
Yeah.
No,
which, okay,
not necessarily.
BS. Yeah, the other worst news to me was, as we talked about, just these fees from Discogs. Going up and kind of the realization that when you're buying, or especially if you're selling, how much extra you have to pay, which is jacking up prices. And that was tough.
We almost made it through an episode without Discogs.
Yes, almost. There we go.
So as we wrap up our best of 2023 on Two Guys Talking About Records, I wanted to ask Steve, think long and hard on this. What has been the most personally satisfying overall addition to your collection in 2023? The album that just makes you feel the best about, I've got this.
Yeah. There was the Descendants, Milo Goes to College. I mean, that
picked up that vintage.
Yeah, it's so hard to come by. And I got this at the record show.
Yep.
Yeah, from Mike. Wow. Just to get it at the price that I got it at was amazing. And so to have that, there it is on my wall. And look, I mean, for a punk rock person, it's like one of those grails.
Yep.
And you never see it. Of course, it was funny at the show, there was 2 of them. I mean, you never see it until you go, and there's 2 of them, but only one was the fantastic price.
Congrats again on that.
Yeah, that was. There was a lot of great albums this year that I brought back into my collection. Originals, a lot of them I found here. So I mean, it was an extremely good year, maybe an expensive year again.
Understood. And for me, it was the same thing. I brought in so much cool stuff. I've discovered some, new to me stuff in some of these older psych records that have come in that turned out to be quite valuable, and I'm happy to have had them in the collection. But in thinking back, and this is earlier on in the year, one of the greatest additions was a reissue that I had to specially order because the earlier reissues were even priced out of ridiculous range, was Alexi Murdaugh's Time Without Consequence. This was released in 22, but I don't think I picked it up until way early in the year. And it's just a great album. I've enjoyed his stuff on a digital side of things for a while, and I've been looking for this album, and I couldn't get it through my distributors, and I couldn't feasibly get myself to order it through Discogs for triple digits for what they were asking. But this is just a great, good, mellow, acoustic, very dark and moody album from Murdaugh. Very introspective. And I think we talked about that before. You picked up one too, I believe, right?
Yeah, I did.
So in the reissues. But that one, I think, for me, was just one of the most gratifying additions because it was one that I wanted in my collection, but I wasn't willing to jump through that extra 5 hoops to get it. But when I finally did find it reasonable, I was glad I did.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
So there we go. One of the coolest songs, All My Days. Great song. We'll link to that, by the way. I should mention that most of the music that we talk about will be on a Spotify playlist, so you can hear the things that we talk about.
Yep.
Overall, Steve, 2023, a good year for you?
There was a lot of records. In fact, I'm purging so I can make room for some of these records.
We'll see what 2024 has to bring.
Yeah.
So that will actually do it for this episode of Two Guys Talking About Records. And as I think Steve and I had discussed, this is going to do it for the year also. We're going to take a couple of weeks off to spend some time with family and get some stuff done. It's busy time here at the store. I'm obviously nursing, some other stuff going on. So we will kind of put a cap on it for the year and see you guys again back in 2024. That's odd to say, isn't it?
It is, isn't that? Yep, something else, boy.
So in the meantime, we do invite you to back up our catalog. We're 40-plus episodes in. This will give you a week or two to kind of catch up on some of the nonsense that we've talked about over the whole, man, it's been almost,
almost a year.
Almost a year coming up on this.
Yeah.
So very fun to think about, Steve. And as always, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. And check out our Facebook page. Always a pleasure, Steve.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to what 2024 has to offer us.
And Merry Christmas to you and your family, and Happy New Year.
And you guys, too, as well. Enjoy that grandkid.
Yep, looking forward to it. First birthday coming up.
That should be fun. And we wish all of you listeners out there, for some reason, you guys stick with us week by week, which we're always very happy to have you here. But we look forward to serving you guys well into next year as well with this nonsense that we talk about. But in the meantime, head over to our Facebook page, and you can interact with us in that fashion. Other than that, we will talk to you folks next year.
Yes, happy holidays, everyone.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.